And if you need to carry on eating, please feel free to do so. All right, so 7A, we kind of spoke at length with it. Jeff is now going. Do you need a direction from council to kind of...
Do you have one?
Well, no.
How about a misdirection?
You're going to work on it. You don't need us to tell you to work with Councillor Selk. You're okay, right?
I think I understand the intent of the work.
Okay. 7B is a request for Southern Alberta Equine Center Society. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Mayor, with respect to this facility,
Yes.
and Councillor Brown work on this with us as well because she's the rec person.
It seems to make a perfect fit.
Yes, please.
If I can work on
Since
16
we've had
folks
a ban.
on the golf guy.
No, absolutely. That would be
If I can work on the 16
within
folks on the golf guy.
a portfolio. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
7B, Southern Alberta Equine Center Society. It's a request that was done because I wanted to upgrade to the facility, whoever the new group is, and the new management group. There are some different views, I understand, around the table regarding this request. It's not a request of money. It's a request of support for them to access CFAP funding. Councillor Court.
I'd be willing to make a recommendation for the support the SIP grant, simply because if they get that building into top shape, maybe they'll use it as the main agrodome.
Okay,
Just for
so
their
that's an
It's not costing us any
interesting,
money, it's just a support.
okay, so that's an interesting perspective.
We're talking way
I
down the
know-
road here.
I know some other people may want to talk about that. Councillor Selk, you have your own opinions.
Okay. Who are these guys? What's their mission statement? What's the purpose for them being there? Who owns the building? What kind of upgrades are they doing? To me, it seems like until we get answers to all of those questions and what they're actually doing, we're actually supporting someone who is an organization that is in direct competition to the Ag Society and is in direct competition to our own facility at the Agrodome. So why would we support something like that?
Okay, that's one point of view. Councillor Barnes, what's your opinion on this one?
You know, I'm really not sure. It's not costing us any money on this. They're just basically asking us for support. They're not asking for any money, any
So you would be
funding.
supporting that?
So I don't have a problem with
Okay.
it.
Let me ask a question, Council. Who's on that board now? Is it you?
I'm on the eggs.
Are they doing any youth development programs over there at the Agrodome?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
I was not aware of that, so.
But this
Okay.
is, this used to be the West Wind's baby,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And now it's,
whatever.
Equine Center, yeah.
Okay, just give everybody a chance and then Councillor Seller will come back to you.
yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with Councillor Selk. I'd like to kind of know what they're doing and who owns it and where they plan on going. I don't want to duplicate services.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Well, this kind of rolls back to what y'all just said in regards to the Carriage House Theatre and Community Theatre, right? We have two, right? Yeah.
Three theater groups. Stagecoach Theater
Yeah,
as well.
there is also the other one. That
Perfect, but
used the
Same
Remington.
point. Multiple. Whereas, so I did sit on the Agrodome. I don't sit on anymore. I know a lot about. The Rodeo Academy just from secondhand knowledge of being on the Agrodome. I'm a huge supporter of Brad Sommerfeld. I know that if he says this is what they're doing, that's what they're doing. They're above board. I don't think that they're not. But I did bring, when I sat on the Agrodome committee, council did suggest that I bring up the bringing together of the two, you know, of the Rodeo Academy at the time, that's what it was called, and the Agrodome combining, rather than fighting for the same business, essentially. And that was shot down harshly, is the understatement, because they're very separate and they want things, yeah, correct?
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's my understanding, well, this could be a Jeff question. I think Jeff knows this answer. So who owns it? Because we talked about this.
That's,
So it is owned by the society, so the board of directors oversees the ownership of the assets, to my knowledge. I can't speak to the individuals of the society, I just don't know.
Right.
But yes, it's owned by a benevolent society.
Okay, Councillor Bengry, I'll come back to Councillor Selk and to Councillor Cook, maybe Councillor Cook, Councillor Selk. Yeah.
I got the same concerns as Councillor Selk. I think we need a little bit more information, and where is the county coming from with this? Because that building is located in the county. I know they're asking for our support from the town, but what are they doing for the town?
okay, they're not asking for any money. What I see in this letter, when that building was originally built, Randy Jansen was a big supporter of it, and he's the one that got the money for it. It was designed as an equine
Therapy.
for kids that were struggling physically. And I think, if I'm reading this correct, this is kind of where they're trying to get back to. And I know I've had a grandson that's been involved in equine, and it's been very, not here, it's been very good for him. So if that's their intent, I see no reason not to support it. If they're gonna work with the schools and have kids go out there to it, if that's their intent.
Okay,
Is it their intent?
so,
Well, we don't know what their
They,
intent
they
is.
run rodeos.
Well, they do mention that in here.
Well,
Okay.
let's just,
go ahead,
Sorry,
Councillor
Mayor.
Selk. No, that's
so for
okay.
instance, the senior pro rodeo is held at, the Southern Alberta Equine Society building on the weekend. And annoyed all the residents around it because of their loud speaker and their loud announcer and everything else, because they were there for 3 days. And where was the senior pro rodeo? Oh, it was at the Agrodome last year. So don't tell me they're not running in direct competition to what the Agrodome's doing and the Ag Society, because they are.
So that's why I couldn't hear them, because I usually hear those guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
I
So
wasn't aware of that, so
I wasn't either.
it kind of changes my feeling.
I think you need to think of, there are way too many questions regarding that society and what they actually do and what their purpose is, who's on the board of directors, and everything else that surrounds that. So when you say the society owns the building and the board of, well, again, who are the board of directors? Do they own it? Does the society, are they a not-for-profit? What are they?
Councillor Barnes, Councillor Brown.
I thought they were the West Winds Academy. I thought the
Not
school
for a long
division
time.
owned them.
Nope.
They were supported in the past, right?
That's what I thought.
They're no longer involved? Then I retract my support. Because I think you're right, there's too many questions that are
Okay,
unanswered.
Councillor Brown?
Would it be reasonable to assume that we have the board, or who wrote the letter, the president, Brad Sommerfeld, come and answer those questions?
Except they need the application by the
The
15th.
deadline.
Well, that's tricky. Sure. Because I would hate to see somebody not get money, because, you know what I mean? Like,
Just
if
for a
they,
good reason.
We keep saying that they're not asking for money. That's not the point. The point is that they're direct,
support it.
they are in direct competition to our own facility.
Yeah.
Why would we shoot
Okay.
ourselves in the foot?
Councillor Selk, I want to then try to understand something. I've never been part of the Ag Society except having replaced one-time Councillor Court. What I'm trying to understand from what you are saying is that those two organizations at first could never come together to agree to start their whole organization under one roof, joining together. So if that is the case, and if that is still the case, why wouldn't we support that new venue? That's what I'm asking. If they cannot come together, then there is no harm in supporting them. Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, from my understanding and talking to members of the Ag Society, that historically, the West Wind Rodeo Academy, the West Wind, they were using it as an equine something to support programming at the high school. And they went to the Agrodome. Now, one side will say, well, we could never get anything worked out with the Ag Society because they were just being too difficult. The Ag Society's view was that no, we actually said that if you need to have your own separate facility, build it up there in the buffalo paddock, and you can have that and do whatever you want. But there's some stipulations. Well, their theory from the original people who started the academy was that no, you don't get to dictate to us. You don't get to give us any stipulations. And the Ag Society was like, well, no. There's some things that we want you to do that are just reasonable if you're going to be a tenant or you're going to be a user of the facility. We just want you to follow with those stipulations. And there was no agreement on that, so they went their separate ways. They built they did their thing.
But today they're not going to reconcile, obviously.
I don't know how much money was exchanging hands, but they were renting from the Agrodome. They were paying them to use that facility. And Mr. Jensen talked to whoever in government and managed to scrape up $1 million, $1.5 million, and there it is. So that's kind of what happened there. And it was Mr. Jensen who was pushing it because he could see a value for the kids getting credits. These kids that were struggling a little bit, and that would be to their advantage. The government, I don't know if they pulled that plan on them in a few years later or not. I'm not sure why it ended anyhow.
Okay, give me a sense by a thumb up and down if you're for or against writing a letter of support. Councillor Drew?
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. I think it's, if they're doing some programs for kids and it's going to be appropriate and help people, I think that's all right. I just don't want it to be in competition with the Agrodome.
But it might happen, right?
But it is.
But it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
know that.
Councillor Selk, Councillor Bengry,
No.
Councillor Brown,
I want more information.
Councillor Court.
Again, if it's for the benefit, as you mentioned, then I'm thumbs up for it.
Okay, so there again, myself, if there is a benefit to a population that is not addressed by the rodeo, by the Agrodome, then I would totally support.
So why can't those programs be run out of the Agrodome?
Well, because obviously there's conflict that happened in the past that has not been resolved.
Oh.
And that's possibly where we're at. And in a building that is now sitting empty or not maybe used the proper way. I don't know.
Same could be said for our Agrodome, which, by the way, we
Yeah,
all-
you know, I don't disagree with any of your feelings. So right now we are at a stalemate from what I can see. The need to have more information, a timeline that is there, and the impossibility of giving them the letter that need to do upgrade.
I will withdraw my recommendation until we get this solved a little bit better.
All right. So how are we going to solve it if we are in a time constraint? Jeff might help us.
Got Brad's cell number, but I haven't reached out to see if he's there yet. I was just trying to find his number. I just got it right now, so I can step out. Oh, you have it?
I have it.
No, I have it now.
Oh.
Yeah. If you would like, I can call him and see if he can talk right
I
now.
think he would
Could-
prefer that, so he has an answer.
We got 7 days before this.
Can't
All
we
right.
just get the information, send out an email to council, and then
Yeah, it's not the preferable way. Public meeting is always the best, but we might have to do it differently.
You know, I'm kind of ambivalent whether to get it.
Okay, so you withdrew your motion.
I did.
Okay. All right, so meanwhile, let's talk about 7C, ATCO gas franchise fee. As you could see, the recommendation from administration is not to change the franchise fee. That is a flow-through, and really, there is, in my opinion, no need to change it.
I suggest we go with the administration recommendation, not to
No.
change it.
Okay, not to change the franchise fee. All in favor? Thank you very much. Let's talk about 7D, the letter to MLA Joseph Scow reassessment. Councillor Court, there will be your chance to approve the letter if you're okay with that.
Yes, I will make a recommendation that we approve this letter that's being sent to our MLA, Mr. Joseph Scow.
I think it's very well crafted.
Yes.
And thank you to Jeff that is not here. All in favor? Thank you very much. So that's done. Okay, so maybe at this time, the recommendation from Parks and Rec Committee. Do you want to go ahead, Councillor?
So, at Parks and Rec, we met this last week, and it was brought to us that, so normally they get funding from three different,
So we're talking about the
Public
skating
Correct.
club.
Correct.
Yeah,
So normally they get three different, the Rotarians,
the Lions.
the Lions, and there's a third one.
Kinsman, it used to be.
No, are Rotarians.
The Kinsmen
Rotary
used to be.
is the other one. Those three.
Hello.
So those three give money so that we can have free public skate. And this year, because they have not been able to fundraise or have any sort of fundraising due to COVID, they're looking at not having enough money to then fund it. So then the rec board, it was brought up to us, and it was asked around the table whether or not we felt like we still wanted to go ahead with it, and if so, was it reasonable for a family to pay a nominal fee, a toonie, a loonie, whatever. And the rec committee moved to recommend to council to support having public skate for the 2021 season. And if the service clubs are not able to contribute their normal amount to public skate this year, we were okay with there be a nominal fee. So that's where they.
Was the third party the Legion by any chance?
No, it was not.
So it was a Rotary, the Legion, the Lions,
Rotary,
the Lions.
Lions?
yes, and the Rotarian.
But that's a Rotary, is a Rotarian.
Nope. There was
It used
two
to be the
Rs.
Kinsmen, but they're no longer
Nope.
around.
Rotarians. Anyway,
The Lady Rotarians?
no.
Anyways,
Moral of the story
okay.
is there was money coming in.
Right.
It's not
Fair
due
enough.
to COVID. So,
So we're
to
looking
look
at
at
$3,500
Yes,
something like that.
exactly under 4,000
Right.
in order to have this.
Yeah.
The feeling around the table was that this is important. They
Mm-hmm. for
did
mental
feel like,
health,
and
yeah.
it's cold, and it's great for kids to get out, and it's really well utilized. The
Okay.
hiccup was, sorry if I can continue, the hiccup is the figure skaters this year are really struggling because they're a part of Figure Skating Alberta, and there are so many stipulations put on them this year in regards to you have to come in one door and out the other, and you got to keep ages separate, and anyway, there's a huge amount of fields or fences that they're having to jump over. And so the timing, when we were talking to Randy, of that was going to be trying to figure out that we space people coming and going, trying to keep the COVID rules in place if we're still having to fit all of the guidelines. That was going to be the next hurdle for us, but we thought we would bring to council, get the funding just in case.
Okay,
is
so
essentially-
we're not sure it will happen, but we need to have provision for
Correct.
funding.
Correct.
Okay, Councillor Selk, you wanted to say something or make a recommendation?
Both, actually.
Go ahead.
Just a question. So 3,500, that's what it costs for
Correct.
public skating
Correct.
for the year?
Correct.
Why don't we just eat it, period? rather than having somebody come in with a toonie and having all their rec staff having to collect toonies and loonies and then make a
That's
deposit.
concern.
So why don't we just eat it? That would be my recommendation, and I'd make a motion to that effect. We'll just eat it.
Can I?
Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
So 100%, that was a concern Randy had. So what am I standing at the door picking up the loonies?
Yeah,
and
right,
toonies?
exactly.
That makes me cranky. But, I mean, me personally, not him, of course. He's never. But the hope is that these clubs will be able to, even if they can put $1,500, the hope was that there would be some put forward, but I am supportive if they can't. They
We get
haven't
the
said they're
difference.
not putting any forward, but they have said it doesn't look like they would be able to put it all forward. So we
Okay.
just wanted to have money put forward to cover us, just so it can be in place.
Okay, so if somebody has such a generous heart, can you have a bucket with donation and people can put what they want in there?
That's a good
Without anybody touching the money?
Could they not donate to the office here instead?
Well, I do,
Or
Concession.
the concession, yeah, sorry. I didn't
a
miss it.
loony, a toonie, I mean, put a bucket somewhere and let them put it inside there,
So
if they want to.
generally speaking, if nobody contributes as a council, we can make a decision to just have
Exactly.
free public skating and we'll cover
Yeah.
the costs. Whatever the rec budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that,
So can you kind of word your motions a little bit
okay,
better?
here we go. Hang on. I'd like to make a motion that what the service clubs in town are able to contribute to public skating, we will accept whatever level of funding that is.
And make up the difference.
And the council will make up the difference so that we will still have free public skating.
And the
if
money
people are
to-
willing to make a
Donation.
monetary contribution of some sort, we would accept that as well. But it's not mandatory in order for them to skate. Holy cow, that was a wordy motion. Got
Okay,
that, JD? Shem did? Shem, can you wordsmith that down to about, I don't know, 2 sentences rather than 12?
Paragraph and a half.
yeah,
Just eat it.
okay, all right. So comment, question, the only thing is we don't know out of which budget is coming. Might come out of the donation budget somewhere.
Yes, no.
Jeff, I need a little bit of help here.
Sorry, I missed, I don't know what topic you're on.
We have a motion on the table that is to absorb, the council absorb the difference of the skating rental, whatever that is,
Public skate.
if the clubs cannot come up with all the money, or to absorb it all.
Okay. So we're
But-
not charging an admission is what I'm
Right.
hearing.
But we also suggested that at the concession, there'll be a donation bucket, and people who feel so inclined can put something in there.
Or take it out.
Yes,
If I can add to that, I mean, yes, I'm in full support, but something that was brought up in our meeting was, so let's just say Extra Foods can't donate cash. However, they could donate potatoes. But then we have the concession at the ice arena that needs potatoes. So then, you see where I'm going with this?
So we don't operate the concession.
I'm aware of who does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically been on the back of Jenna for years. right?
Agreed.
So, I'm sure there's some way to work that.
But would that be appropriate to then help pay for this?
If there's a
Do you like how I
value to
do?
the contract or the concession, sure, they have to put the value on
If
it.
you had 6 apples and your neighbor took 3, how many apples?
okay, all right. So, Jeff, I still don't know out of which budget that will come.
Okay, so I got a few things going on in my head right now, so I was frantically taking notes, talking to Brad. So it's not an expense we're incurring, it's a revenue we're losing.
Okay, so
it
we don't
does
need to
net
worry
out.
about
So
it.
what's gonna happen is we simply won't achieve, you need to be aware that at the end of the year, we're not
Yeah.
going to achieve the revenue projections in that
Okay.
facility.
Fair
And
enough.
given COVID, I don't know what ice time's gonna look like with our major stakeholders either. I just don't
okay.
know. Please don't ask me to stick close to budget numbers in the COVID year, because they are all over the place.
Okay, I appreciate
mess.
that. so long that don't look as bad as what we presented at the provincial and federal level, will be okay.
Yeah, no, I don't have a $200-something billion deficit in store.
No, we're not going to go there. So, Councillor Bengry.
Along with that thinking, Jeff, and I don't want to sound like the Grinch that stole Christmas, but we're in a pandemic with COVID-19, and we got to be careful about being Robin Hood with all these organizations. We got to be very careful.
But we need to also think of the mental health of all those
absolutely.
kids. Because if you don't think of that, you're missing the point of what COVID is doing to the population.
Oh, I understand that 100%.
And on that,
Way worse than the
who do you
Schmidt
think
Foundation.
gets the butt of it? The kids. And so
And
by
then-
having public skate,
Yeah.
that's getting kids off the computers to a
Yeah.
safe place to enjoy a little family time. Of all the things, if we're going to cut, this should not be one of
No,
them.
not right now, that's for sure,
no.
I agree.
Heck no.
The pool is fabulous, and so will be the rink.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So the revenue has never been the
No.
stop or go for the rink. It's $3,600.
Yeah.
Right, and the other thing I would say is I support the direction you're going here, by the way, because some of those kids, many
Have
who
no money.
frequent our public skate the most are the kids that need some structure and some supervision that provides.
Exactly.
Okay.
They would be considered vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And,
I'm glad for
is
this
important.
conversation. Thank you all for that. And you're right, we cannot be the giver of money all the time. And we need to be selective. You're exactly right. I agree with you. But I think that one is an important one to support. So, no more comments? All in favor? Thank you. All right, so that's done. You can report to your committee, Councillor Brown.
Can I just add one thing to go with this, if that's
Please
okay?
go ahead.
So the other thing that the rec board suggested was they wanted it to be known that they were in full support of a walking path of some sort.
Okay,
So-
so that will be in a planning session. We can
Correct.
bring that at that point. Thank you very much for the up. And I like walking past, by the way.
Me too.
Okay, so let's go 7F. Business arising from delegations, Mr. Jensen, Ryan, and Mr. Holland. So here we have a suggestion that we should try to look at a irrigation line to save potable water for the use it's meant to be, and to bring down their water bill for those large acreage, which is a side benefit of it. There is a cost, almost $400,000, something like that. Jeff is looking at different possibility of funding, and it appears that there might be a decent source of funding through, I don't remember the organization, FCM, that's right. So my recommendation will be that we direct administration to look into it and to bring back some information. But somebody needs to make a motion, unless, Jeff, you need to talk about it.
Yeah, why?
Why don't I give a little further update? I've met with Councillor Brown and Selk on this a couple of times, but I also met with the Levitt Irrigation Board this morning.
Okay.
And we came out with some action items from there.
Okay, do you want to share?
So, I know the night's getting on, but let me give a little bit of background,
Soon we-
a little
we
more
know.
background. So, the town has irrigation acre feet allowance to land in the West Area Structure Plan now.
Yeah, 70.
So there is a leg off of the lateral K which dead ends near the cemetery. It's on the south, just on the southwest corner of the solar field. Okay.
Right.
And that's where the leg dead ends. There is a concern of volume availability during high use of that, and so Levitt Irrigation isn't. They think we can manage it through a number of ways, but they're not crazy about just trying to hook on 24 residences on that immediately. They think that's going to cause problems for them upstream. Now, it's been interesting that the license piece came up today as actually we have license and we shouldn't have license. We have 73.5 acre feet of license on the east side of 12th Street. where Mike Schaefer has his land is and 10th Street and all that, but we don't own any land there anymore. So we actually have no reason to hold acre-feet license for irrigation anymore. We shouldn't rightfully hold any. But for some reason, we've maintained it these years. And we have 80 acres across the way, which we should only have about 50. So the discussion we had with the irrigation district was we can reallocate those licenses to reassign them for general municipal use that would allow us to use them for potable use down the road, which I think is a very good thing. So I'm going to work with them to restructure our licenses. But their concern is with volume on that site, and the residents' concern, as we've talked with Mr. Holland in particular, is we don't want to build this to fit the 21 that are there, and then in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, maybe there's 40 of them on it.
Yeah.
And now they're having to fight for who gets enough pressure to run their sprinklers. So we want to probably oversize this for a larger build out eventually, but that comes with a cost. And so the residents are saying, we're fine to financially participate to some degree, but we're not wanting to pay for this oversizing for future build. You know, we're fine to help pay for what we need today, but we don't need to pay for what somebody down the line 10 years might need. And so there's that piece. What happened this morning is Levitt Irrigation and the town agreed that the engineer for Levitt Irrigation would now meet with Brandon, and they would determine the volume that was available at that turnout, at the end of that leg, and what we could service depending on the size of service lines we gave to each resident along the way. So those are things we still need to determine, because they could have great potential impact on the cost. One of the things that was thrown out by Levitt Irrigation was they'd like to replace that whole leg all the way back up to the lateral K. Well, that's a long way. That goes from the solar field up to the water plant, essentially going straight south. So there's a cost there. And then ideally, the irrigation district would like to pipe the rest of the lateral K from where it ends now in ditch to the Alberta Environment main ditch. And they think they can mitigate the volume issues. But that's probably, at quick guesses, a $1.5 million touch. So we've agreed to investigate the volume that's here and how we can provide the residents there with the infrastructure that's there. And we've also agreed to explore the town and the irrigation district partnering in piping the rest of lateral K and what that might look like. And so those two things are still to be determined. We just decided that this morning. Actually, we already got the maps of the whole system, so Brandon now has the maps from Levitt Irrigation. They sent a link to all those this morning. And Brandon knows their engineer, so they're going to start talking. So we have a little bit to develop here. And I think it doesn't sound like we're going to entertain this project for stimulus funding, which is fine. But what we're going to have to do is really look at how we structure the funding of it if it's still a priority of council. Because there's many ways to approach this.
Okay.
Some of them will not be appealing to the neighborhood, and some will. So we have to look at how that'll play out, right?
Okay, so Jeff, essentially what you can do for whenever you feel the timing is right is be able to bring us back the different scenarios that you can come up with once we understand the magnitude of that project, because right now it seems to be at a very infancy stage.
When we met with Mr. Jensen and Mr. Holland today, what I left them with was that, because Mr. Jensen asked, what's our role here? What do we do as a community group now?
Was a voice.
And then I said, well, you'll be integral going forward as to how we structure the funding of this thing.
Yeah.
We'll need you at the table to understand what's acceptable and what isn't. So right now, that's where it's at, and we're working on understanding it better.
Thank you. Councillor Court?
I think you'll be taking into account a holding pond that's probably going to have to be built if they're starting to put more irrigation up there and more houses up there. That was the whole intent 10 years ago. As it became more dense in population, you're going to have a spot for that water to go.
Yeah, and especially if they're watering heavy and creating more stormwater.
Will that go next to Ryan's house?
That's where it's set aside for,
yeah.
correct, yeah. It's just, well, it's exactly south of Kendoig's and wraps around to Ryan's there. I actually spoke to the irrigation board this morning. One thing we're finding, Brandon took a drive and followed the piping infrastructure all the way up to the lateral K. And many of those irrigation users on that leg let their irrigation run 24/7. So they run it into a dugout, and then it overflows in the ditch, and it eventually finds its way down the ditch on Highway 2 and into our storm infrastructure. And so we had some discussion this morning about how we could potentially work together to mitigate that type of that use. Irrigation's an interesting beast because there's no motivation for efficiency or conservation there.
Pay a flat fee.
You just
and
pay a
run
flat
what you
fee
do.
and you let her go, and that's what you do. And so what happens is we're doing that study with Associated Engineering on the stormwater management for the region, and Associated has pointed out that they think irrigation actually might have a significant impact on the stormwater infrastructure within the town, and they want to explore that further. So I gave the board some heads up this morning that we may be asking to meet with them to discuss that a little further.
Okay.
That's just as an aside.
All right, so at this point, we'll leave it into your capable hands.
We'll see how it progresses here.
All right, the second delegation was the Schaefer delegation. They had really essentially 2 points that are brought forward. One, that $30,000 is definitely an amount that is possibly way too high, and 20,000 might still be too high. The other one was a possibility of doing things differently when it comes to inspection, and that's something that Jeff kind of alluded to. And the third point, there was a third point actually, was the off-site levy. And their sense that the off-site levy increased again their fees of developing. But there was no direct correlation between developing houses because the people are not really rushing to build lots here, except that the price of the lots are going down and the expenses to service those lots are going up. So that's a little bit what I got from the conversation. So Councillor Court, Councillor Barnes.
This has been going on for quite a while. When I first got on council, they
I
approached
remember that.
and was wanting the town to put all those services in, then collect the payment on it after they sold it. And they got a little heated at times, and I've actually said to one of the developers that if you're so confident that you can sell 10 lots, then you won't have a problem with an off-site levy.
And that's the issue,
That's the
right?
issue, because it could take 20 years to sell those lots, and the town is on the hook for whatever it costs to put those services in. Yes, it'd be great if they'd all sell in 5 years, it would be no problem.
No,
That's the problem.
I hear you.
That's why we went with the off-site levies, so.
Yeah, I hear you on this one.
Couple of things. At one time, the town had a policy that they wouldn't put in the pavement and other things until there was a specific percentage of homes built within that development. So that was an incentive to do that, right? And so the other thing is the town owns lots down in Scowville. And those lots are on average, what, about 42 to 49,000-ish, right there.
They're probably
And when you have a developer, you've got a couple developers that are looking at lots that are anywhere from $90,000 to $200,000 or more. I know there's three of them, three developers. And they're not selling theirs, but is the town selling those inexpensive lots? So I don't see the correlation
No correlation.
at all, because if people want to build that badly here in town, then they're going to jump all over these inexpensive lots first and build there, which they're not.
Well,
There's a few, mind you, but it's really slow.
Councillor Bond, I would kind of put a little bit of caveat in what you're saying, because what Ryan was saying, what they are trying to sell is acreage,
Yeah,
along with,
totally different from a
right?
lot.
So it's not exactly your regular little size lot. I mean, you can't compare the two sizes, right? A city
that's
lot
right. But-
with an acreage lot, right?
And I would love to see him be able to develop that that property, and there are people out there who would like a half an acre. You know, I had one, it was 2/3 of an acre, I loved it, but I sold it. But it's just, you know, you gotta have people out there that want to buy it. Those that want to buy it bad enough are gonna pay the price. I don't know, you know, what the deal is on, like, okay, you go to Lethbridge, their lots in Lethbridge start around $150,000 to $200,000 for a little postage stamp lot over there, right? And they are building them there, but they've got something for them. They have the attractions, they have the infrastructure, they have the businesses and everything over there.
And the
And we
utilities.
are a
and
rural community.
And
You
200,000
can't
people.
compare those things, amenities, and yeah, we're at the end of the line, but it's a lifestyle that you're buying here. Those who want it are gonna come and get it.
Okay, so you're not in support of the request. What about the bonds?
Can I speak to that
Jeff?
for a bit?
Yeah.
I mean, really the piece we want to, and again, there's other
The piece we
stakeholders
need
that
to
could
talk
speak to
about
this,
is a
but
bond.
I was hoping to pin down this security piece, because where we left this conversation, albeit months ago, I acknowledge that, was we were trying to determine if there was an appropriate amount of security to place upon the development where we were inheriting infrastructure. Again, this is not related to house building or subdividing a lot where there's already services.
Right.
That's all irrelevant
Yeah.
for the purposes of the security discussion. What we're talking about is if Mike's gonna, we'll use Mike because he was here, if he's gonna go build 2 different roads with water and storm and sanitary and road base, are we putting any kind of security obligation upon him that it's done correctly, that if it isn't, we can draw from to fix it?
Okay. Councillor Court?
You just have to look at 10th Street to answer your question there.
Well,
No.
I know. There you go. So,
But I appreciate what he's saying is,
Yeah.
and I also agree, there's very few guys that develop that can be bonded.
Okay.
They haven't been in that game. So it does add a cost, there's no question. And whether we can mitigate all that risk through inspection, I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know if we can.
so that's exactly my question to you. We can increase inspection, but would we be ever 100% sure that it's up to specs when we take it over? That's my concern, and always has been my concern from the past issues that we had to deal with.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with issue the same way because it's costly to the town and there's no need for it. So how can we go to be able to find middle of the road that still satisfy both? I don't know that we can. Councillor Barnes?
I'm really torn here because I want to see development. I want this town to grow and want us to be able to gather taxes and stuff. But it's not been it's been 2008, 2009 was the last real push when we built a lot of houses back then, you know, for one reason or other. But lots were $17,000, $18,000 back then. You know, but now the lot prices are prohibitive. That's just all there is to it. But I'm having a hard time being able to justify to the taxpayer us spending that money to sit on it for a number of years. I wish I had a crystal ball. I could say, you know, next year all of a sudden, you know, we're going to have lots of houses built. But we're living in a COVID society right now, where there's not a lot of people that are doing that. People are very, very reluctant to spend that money at this point in time in their lives.
So essentially, the story is the $30,000 bond still something that we want from a builder? Or is there a need to have a portion of more inspection at the town level with a decreased amount in that bond? Essentially, that's where we're at.
I think that's the way to go.
Well, I'll complicate the security thing just a little further because, you know, there was a part of security where we're protecting ourselves from getting inferior infrastructure. That's part of it. But the other side of requiring security was also to protect ourselves if the person, the developer, does not meet the terms of his or her development agreement.
Right.
So for example, if they do not construct within a year and complete within 2, what is our ramification? What can we do? And when we talked about the 30,000, and that's kind of a placeholder number, but it's a number that we said, okay, if Tim Court signs a development agreement to commence construction and he doesn't, we start to take that $3,000 a year from him until he complies, right? So it was also a stick to try and get compliance. And we've seen recent examples of that
Yes.
biting us in the butt, frankly.
Yes.
Where we signed development agreements, they weren't complied with, we were left with pretty little options. So we were also looking at the $30,000 piece as, this is something that you have to put up so that you know there's a consequence if you don't complete your development agreement.
Yeah, you're gonna get that money back if you do it.
If you do everything you're supposed to, that money comes back to you. That's how it's written. But we called it a delay fee or a non-compliance fee if you didn't meet the conditions of your development agreement as well.
All right.
So there's that part of it too.
So in other words, that money is never retained by the town when the terms of the contract are respected
Well,
by
we
the
wouldn't have any
developer.
reason to, no.
Exactly. So it's an in and out at the best.
It's like a damage deposit in a rental
Yeah,
situation,
something like
right?
that.
So we're just securing that if things get ruined, we have money to fix whatever it is.
Yeah, or we have a little bit of a stick if you simply refuse to comply.
Right.
So if it's worth $30,000 to you not to comply, or whatever the number ends up being, then we take it from you. And that's how we say, well, you're not gonna, if I recall, some of the discussion was, let's say, for example, I don't know, hypothetically, I agreed to build a large commercial building on a lot, and I didn't. Well, we were intending to take taxation from that large commercial building within 24 months of you buying the lot from us.
Correct.
And you didn't do it. So we're just going to take that money out of your $30,000 until you comply. Because
Which made sense when we discussed it all. It was very clear to us because we had a situation at hand that really made us aware of the gap we had. And I understand also the developer's perspective, who wants to be honest and move forward. But we need, regardless of who it is that is on the front of us, we need to secure our position so that the taxpayer is not the one at the end paying for the repairs that we need to do.
I think part of the problem is that the costs haven't gone down, but what you can sell your lot for may have. Well, I'll use mine as an example, because I probably might have the newest home in here, I don't know if I do. I built it 12 years ago, and I paid $75,000 for that lot. But that lot included pavement, it included sidewalk, it included every hookup, including my telephone. Is that what they're planning on doing out here? And that's why the price is 80-something thousand, because, I'm guessing the money could probably make more than anything would be actually building the structure. That's where he'll make his money. If he makes it exclusive that he has to build in there,
Right.
that's where the money's gonna be, not in the lot and the hookups and the.
And you have to remember too, and
was
we'll use
always,
Mr. Schaefer again, large lot, your margin is thinner.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they're 45-foot lots in Lethbridge.
Yeah.
Because they have to maximize the amount of lots on per meter of utility.
And they didn't say it, but that's one of the reasons that the development by the golf course, their lots were too narrow.
Yeah.
Compared to everybody else's lots, and that's why they struggle a little bit
Yeah.
there. I mean, I think Mike's trying to do the right thing and trying to get these things going and getting prices where we can all be happy with it. I'm just not sure how to get to that point.
Yeah. And
All
to be
right.
fair, he's not the kind of developer that worries me. I don't lose a lot of sleep if he's
Okay.
gonna do it right either, right?
So,
But we can't have a policy that says,
no.
hey, you're not so bad, but you, yeah, 100 grand cash before you turn a shovel, right? You
And-
can't,
and-
you
and
can't
that
play
is-
it that way.
That is a problem. We need to be fair and equal to all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to secure ourselves no matter who is on the front of us.
Protect ourselves. Yeah.
So what is the position of council on this one? Do we leave it the way it is? And not everybody's going to be happy, but
Well, I still like the idea of more inspections. That was the problem we had with one of the recent developments up there.
I
We didn't have
remember.
the inspections until it was too late. And so I think if Brandon is on on that, doing inspections as you go along. And, it's like, in the building inspectors in Lethbridge, we don't have them here. The building inspectors in Lethbridge, they look at the
Basis.
job as it's going along. You can't move past a point till you progress to a particular point. And the inspectors will tell you, this is the time. That's how they do it in Lethbridge. That's how they do it. And you can't move forward until you've done and committed to do that part. They want to make sure that everything is built to code.
Okay,
I thought that was kind of a bank thing. I thought we did that here as well.
Well, they report to the bank, and then the bank gives them the payments as it goes along. But it's not that way everywhere. The larger cities are like that.
yeah, but then all of a sudden there is two issues. One issue is this one for developers that's going to develop, but the other issue is what do we do with the one who doesn't develop? Right? So that should almost be two separate kind of provision within the bylaw. Councillor Selk,
Move to extend till 9 o'clock.
thank you. Are in favor? Thank you. Councillor Drew?
So it sounds like, as far as the developer is concerned, that Mike is the only one that can be bonded anyways.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that, and I don't want to give the impression that bonding is the only way to take security, but yes, it's not common that if, let me pick, and I think I'd be correct here, let's take Don Hall owns 10 acres behind the elementary school to the west. Pretty sure Don's never tried to be bonded for a development project before. Why would he? He's never had need. So he's not going to walk into a bonding company and say, hey, I want to do $1 million project. Do you want to bond me? They're going to say, no. So we'd have to have an alternative. And bonding's a difficult one because there's so few that can do it. Whether it's simply cash, letter of credit. Now that ties up their cash. That's the issue with those.
Yeah.
To tell Mike we need $550,000 in a letter of credit to secure all of the utility investment, well, how in the world would he proceed with the development?
couldn't
If we
do
just
it.
tied up $500,000 of his cash. It's just not going to happen. So there's a number there, but I think, or there isn't, but we can't stifle the development by demanding that.
So if we were to do, in one hand, increase inspection and maybe instead of 30,000 be 15,000, would that be more palatable to them? I don't know.
Yeah. Which would be fully refundable, right? It's not a
Right.
charge, it's
So
a deposit.
would
Unless they renege.
would that be,
Yeah.
for a developer like Mike, something that we could entertain?
So the question, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I know the answer to my own question, but if he's got $500,000 in roads, sewer, and water lines, does $15,000 really motivate him to? I mean, really, what kind of a stick do you have there? If
Okay.
you have to go in and replace a couple $100,000 worth of work to fix it.
Okay, so Jeff, here's my best cuff question. What's your recommendation?
Right. So I don't have one necessarily because it's not clear. There isn't a clear answer here. Right? It's quite political in the fact that we're trying to navigate a whole bunch of subjective criteria here. So if we're the city of Lethbridge, here's our standard, here's our levy, deal with it or go somewhere else. We're not in that driver's seat. Period. But the city of Lethbridge is as stringent as you'll find. I mean, they don't mess around. $200,000 an acre offsite levy. Stringent development requirements. You don't move a muscle unless everything's 100%. Fully bonded, 100% of the value of the project. But we're not in that situation.
Yeah. The only thing is there is no guarantee for any of us that no matter what we do, they will attract more buyers into this town.
We have over
There's-
100 lots in inventory in the town right now
There is no,
that are for sale.
I don't believe there is a true correlation between the two.
No.
I really don't believe that. But it's only my instinct. Councillor Court?
The thought, and I'm not obviously.
We don't own them, but are available.
I'm not a builder, obviously, but can we not withhold any development permits depending on how well the infrastructure is? I'm thinking roads here. That seems to be a concern. If you build the roads and it's not up to
But
Our specifications, we simply deny them any development in there.
But it's more than
Until it gets to that point.
I don't know.
That's just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know, Councillor. It's complicated if the lots are not in, he doesn't own them anymore. Right, that would be the difficulty. So you went and bought one of his lots and now we're telling you, Tim Court, you can't get a development permit because Mike's road isn't up to speed and you're saying, what does that got to do with me? I paid him for a value of a road.
Yeah.
Councillor,
Thought that one.
Sweet mother.
Yeah.
So, in the essence of time, because we've beat the tar out of this dog,
And you're in no obligation to conclude it tonight either, by the way. Yeah.
I feel like I would support what the mayor said in that, because I know you played the devil's advocate when she said the $15,000, but really, then what's $30,000, right? Like,
Sure.
we could just play that all day, right?
Sure.
So I think I like the idea of there being more checking, more,
Inspections.
that word, more
Yeah.
in a house,
Yeah.
in a
that word.
house.
It's late. And it being $15,000, I think is reasonable. That's my opinion.
Okay, let's go quickly. How does everybody feel about that idea? It doesn't solve the issue of somebody who is supposed to develop and within 2 years and is not doing it. So that's a different. I really honestly feel that we should almost separate the
Yeah, if
two
you want to
issues.
just look at development agreement compliance versus utility performance, you could consider them very different monsters for sure.
I really think maybe we should separate those two so that we can cover one that really covers the development. The other one is the utilities, is all that stuff that we should really try to recoup properly. And there should be a cost to those who choose not to develop within a time frame. And I would separate those two.
Okay?
Maybe that would make life a little bit easier for us right now.
Okay.
I think that's what the issue. When we cannot come to a decision, maybe it's the way the bylaw is worded, need to maybe amend it a little bit.
Yeah, we can look at splitting that out and having some discussion around each one individually. That's no problem. Because again,
Yeah.
you're right. Trying to get someone to comply with their development agreement and trying to get security on installation of $500,000 worth of utilities.
It's not the same
It's a bit of
story
a
to
different
me.
monster for sure. Yeah.
So let's separate them. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe the direction we need to do is to give you the time to kind of revisit that bylaw, kind of amend it a little bit, bring it back, and then I think we'll be possibly more ready to make a decision.
Would you as a group like to hear from anyone else on the matter, like Mr. Atkins, for example, or someone who's spent significant private money on infrastructure? Is
I
there
think
any
it will
benefit
be
there?
interesting to hear something else. He talked about Mr. Wild who cannot be bonded. I mean, that's another perspective too,
Yeah.
because it would affect him more than those who could be bonded. And I'm thinking, yet he's not here.
Yet he's building two big significant
I'd be
bills right
interested
now.
in hearing how the Darren Shaw, where I live at, how that played out. Because the town did work with him on, do you know anything about that?
Well, most, so the,
The Atkins
give
is
my
the same
directions.
story.
The east side of the street was already being
Right.
developed. And so all the infrastructure was there.
There.
Darren's was 2 horse pastures and a barn, right? And his
Built
house in
on
the
it, I
back.
know, yeah.
So the discussion there was, because all that already exists, and I believe the town sold the other side of 7th.
Yes.
I think that was the town's, it was before my time, but,
Where
On the
speed
east
bumps are.
side.
well, just the whole east side of the street was the town's.
Yep.
And so the town invested all that and got their money out on 7th, by and large, and told Darren that if you're gonna be the beneficiary of everything that's already here, it's so much per front foot. So he didn't have to invest in it. He didn't have to put it in. It
Was
aside
already
from the
there.
sidewalk, nothing else existed.
And he put it in my street where I.
Yeah,
live.
8A was a little different. That had to go in, but that's where you are, right? 8A?
Yeah, yeah.
So he was simply the recipient of investment the town had made previously, and so they agreed on a per front foot rate to compensate the town for that previously invested
He
money.
paid that, but he wouldn't have had to pay the whole amount.
No, I don't think so, because there was a lot of benefit to the other side, right?
Yeah.
It benefited the whole east side as well. Yeah,
okay.
so that's what his is called an off-site cost, or just a site cost, because it was already there.
Okay.
All right. Are we okay? Are we okay with administration doing a little bit more work on this?
We wanted a little more.
Okay. Councillor Bengry?
As long as we don't take care of this next year at this same time, because this has come up every year that I've been on council.
Yeah, it's a tough
Invariably.
item.
But,
Yeah.
Councillor, it has moved from a long way, but it's moving very slowly,
There's a day he's just been talking to George.
to the dismay of our builder. I know. Okay. So let's move on to 8, the committee and other report. There is a July 2020 financial report. It's,
Move to accept?
no, it's for your information. Are there any questions regarding this? As you can see, we're moving pretty close to where we intend to be, except if you look at the bottom line. Compared to last year, it seems to be we're miles apart, but I mean, it has to do with a lot of work that is being done and for which we don't have money in the bank yet, so.
Can I just ask a question that has nothing to do with this, but what we just talked about? With Mike and his development, he's going to be building a house soon. Does this stall his ability to build a house?
So right now, you have no criteria requiring security on the infrastructure, and he's going to have to get infrastructure in first.
Okay.
Right now, he couldn't hook himself up to water or sewer or
Right.
anything. But right now, there is no security requirement. So if he proceeds now, he'll proceed without that requirement. The levies he's still subject to, the municipal reserve he's still subject to, but not a security requirement.
Okay, good, thanks, sorry.
Where it is right now.
All right, CAO report.
Can I give you a quick verbal? 'Cause it's not.
I would say it would be good.
And I'll be fairly quick. I did not have a chance, that darn long weekend snuck up on me, but
You know, COVID-19 is a very funny story when you think that things should have slowed down.
Yeah.
For Jeff, it
No,
only
not
revved up at speed that it's made his head turn.
so just really quickly, since August 11th, meetings of significance, I've talked to you at CCW. I've met with the DRP a couple of times since the couple days after that last meeting. August 19th, I had an ICF phone call with the facilitators in Murray. August 24th, we had a staff golf party that went quite well. All the
Jeff-
staff, we had dinner and a
Jeff,
golf
can
party
you
out there.
can you go back a little bit?
Yep.
With the DRP, can you tell me again when they will be mobilized in town?
September 28th.
Thank you.
Yeah. We did 5 interviews for golf managers. Councillor Court sat in on that with me, and that was good. We'll talk about that more in closed session. The mayor and I attended a rural crime meeting with the MPs, the MLAs, and the staff sergeants of the RCMP detachments in Fort Macleod.
We had a chance to talk to Glenn Motz and give him an up to the need to have a meeting
Yeah.
and to visit the town.
Both Joseph Scow and Glenn Motz are in session the day of our planning session, but both agreed that we can put an itinerary together for them. They're actually back not long after, and so that then they'll come and see us. So
Cool.
we got that agreement.
Yeah, we
for
managed
that.
to do all that.
Yeah, both of them actually, ironically, both the legislature and the House of Commons sit, I think, on the 23rd. So they're both heading up then.
Of September?
Haven't called
Yeah.
an election by then.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and this was an administration policy, and in my report I usually tell you if I amended or changed any. I made an amendment to the communications policy, the administrative communications policy, in light of an issue we had with the use of the town's Facebook page by the RCMP. It caused a bit of a stir with naming those who had been charged with crimes, and to be honest, I don't have a problem with that personally. But what happened is our site became the site that facilitated debate between the RCMP directly and the community on the matter, and I didn't like that at all. I didn't want our site and social media platform to be used for that. So I made a couple of amendments to the administrative policy. The first one says that administration will allow third parties to post items of interest to town citizens on the website or social media platform, but all third-party posts must be approved by administration. The third party will not be allowed to post items which will incite controversy or cause offense. Postings from third parties such as notice of criminal charges or posts related to specific individuals involved in criminal activity will be discouraged. So I just didn't want us to find ourselves in that situation again. And again, they've been publishing that all in the paper week to week. That's fine.
okay.
There's no visceral responses to the paper when that's published. You don't have that option. But our forum became a bit of a wreck
Yeah,
with the debate
I
on
agree.
it. So
And I was not pleased.
I amended policy there so that I'll see it first. And then if it looks like it's just going to cause us a firestorm of controversy, we'll simply decline.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to give you an update on. Otherwise, we've talked about most other things, I think.
All right, fair enough. Committee reports, there is a few committee reports from South Grove, Southwest, Alberta Southwest. And anything in particular? There was one from Community Future,
Fourth.
and there was OSC also there. Anything that blatantly disturb you?
Just from information, since I wasn't at the meeting last Thursday, I was at a different meeting, number of fires in the area. So have we seen quite an increase? Or did we not talk about that at the meeting at all?
He reported on the fires, and now, he hasn't reported on this month's, because
Yeah,
we're talking
since-
about all the sirens on the weekend.
Well, I can
Right.
see smoke everywhere when I was coming back from Lethbridge, so
Yeah,
I'm assuming we're gonna see a,
he obviously, he'll report on this once next month, but
Yeah.
yeah, there were, and we talked about
Okay,
them.
a lot of,
thank you.
were they any in the town? No.
I don't recall there being any. No, they were all.
No, but the siren was surely heard all over the town. Okay, so that gives you the end of this.
Mayor, do you want to circle back to the
Yes,
Center?
absolutely, before we go into the correspondence, absolutely, sure. Go ahead.
So I got a hold of Brad. He was actually driving home and his cell service was spotty. So I just asked him everything I could and then took notes what we could get through. So I just asked a couple of things. I said, what's the change in the name? Did it change board of directors? He says nothing changed except the name because they didn't want to be called Westwind like the school. There was too much correlation, or people assumed there was too much correlation where there's none. So it was a simple name change, nothing else changed. The board of directors is Vicky Cahoon, Tyler Bevins, Tracy Eipersbach, Brad, Darren Shaw, and I didn't get the last one. There was one more who I missed, unfortunately. So it's reasonably the same board they've had. The Friends Society, which is the fundraising arm of the group, it's still called the Westwind Rodeo Academy, Friends of the Westwind Rodeo Academy. It's that group that owns the facility and pays the bills and the utilities and does all that stuff. And that hasn't changed, so that's the same thing. They are currently not doing programming with Westwind School Division. That's largely a COVID issue, they're saying, but they're trying to get back to the table to renegotiate that post-pandemic. I asked them about the event last week, and I said, there's some concern that the intent of the new group is to run competition with the Ag Society. And he says, yeah, after the event last week, I can see how that would look that way. And he said, just for what it's worth on that, he said, we did not go to them, they came to us. He said, we did not solicit their business. And from what he says he can't confirm this, and you might know, Councillor Drew, but he said, we were under the understanding there was actually a booking problem at the Agrodome, that there was overlapping events, and so they had to find a different venue. But he says, I wasn't involved in it.
I don't know either.
Yeah. He thought that there was some type of scheduling issue, but he said they came to us and asked for the space quite last minute.
Could be. Could be. I can ask.
So that's what he's telling me. They are largely, he sent me a text right after as well. So a lot of their programming is focused around, and this has been consistent from back in the day. He said, for example, this Monday we have barrel and bull and pole practice for high school kids, and we have Wednesday night exclusive high school practice, roping and goat tying events. They're still focusing on a lot of it's still school kids and then training these kids to actually pursue amateur professional career in rodeo, and that's been fairly consistent there. Other than that, that's what I asked him. So if that changes any of your discussion around it, I'll leave that with you for discussion.
Okay, so that might clarify a little bit the story. So at the last discussion, we had Councillor, Co-Councillor Brown, and myself that were in support of sending the letter. Any more in support?
When's that discussion?
Okay, so unfortunately, there is no appetite to send a letter from the town.
What was the count?
4-3.
3 to 4.
You can make a motion and see if it passes or fails. It's
Yeah,
one way to do it.
motion.
That, I mean, that's what we're going to do because it needs to be recorded publicly.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull it up.
2 separate resolutions.
Go ahead and do it.
I'll withdraw. Well,
I can't see it.
You could actually do it in one resolution, just list both grants. I should have said that. Just list both.
all right, I'll
if
put my
anyone
head
wants
out
to
there on
do
the
it.
guillotine. I'd recommend that both resolutions, support for the SIP grant and for the CFEP grant, we write a letter supporting that.
Okay. So, question, comments before we go to a vote? All right. All in favor? Okay. So we have 4 against. Thank you. Motion passed. Thank you very much. All right. So at this point, we're going to go to 10, correspondence. Remember, once a vote is passed, we're unanimous in our decision, even if we don't like it. 10, correspondence. Then a Justice and Solicitor General. It has to do with rural policing funding and annual report. Doesn't make me any more happy, but
Are they gonna send out a mint so we can choke down that funding model?
we're sending the letter and telling them as loud as we can. We don't like it. It's not good.
Actually, I'm waiting for the letter where they've amended it after they pass the assessment policy.
Exactly.
That's my worry.
That is a very worrisome to me too, because once the rural have the assessment go down big time, somebody else is going to have to make up for the difference. And it can only be the urban, which is terribly painful to me. And I'm really glad that at the time of COVID, when I said that nobody should increase taxes, that is a policy that goes exactly contrary to their message, which is rather odd. Not a good thing. Anyways, it's time to go in closed session. We have some confidential items that are to do with contract matter and labor, and the other one has to do with third-party business interests.
Make a motion to go closed session.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Corey, thank you very much. As always, we much appreciate your patience and your desire to attend those meetings.